I felt it was a shadow of the side that we saw in the second test in Melbourne.
If that's the third test of the autumn, England could win that by 40.
Nah, that guy can levitate. I'm not convinced that he's tethered to the ground.
New Zealand are in a funny place, aren't they?
I think he looks like a wing playing centre at the minute.
Gold dust.
As an event, I think you have to feel it was a disappointment.
I think they could take it really deep. I think they can win it.
Then we just
Thierry Henry,
both went-
Jamie Carragher.
Yeah, it was
It
literally
really-
that.
it really-
As Harry Potter went for the interception, ball's leaving Dingwall's hands. Charles like, Dingwall's having a great game.
Home to the Emirates Dubai Sevens, Dubai is the ultimate sporting break, with a packed events calendar every year, including the DP World Tour Golf Championship and the Dubai Tennis Championships. There are lots of opportunities to witness world-class sport in action. And if you're looking to have your own active adventure holiday, you'll be spoilt for choice, whether that's hitting the paddle court or hiking the mountains of Hatta. Plan your getaway at visitdubai.com.
Well, there we go. A week into the Autumn Internationals, and ding, 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 ding. The test window's actually now officially open. That last week wasn't quite in the window, but we're there now. Welcome back to the Telegraph Rugby podcast. My name is Alan Dimmick. I'm commissioning editor for sport here. And let's roll into rugby. Last week you had the pleasure of Charles Richardson and Gavin Mayers with us. Round of applause, everybody. Welcome back, Charlie Morgan. Charlie, how did you enjoy the last week of rugby? We didn't get your takes.
The build-up was lovely for being a little bit detached, apart from the odd piece from holiday grafting. But no, I was at the game at Twickenham on Saturday, and yeah, felt like I'd rolled into it a little bit cold. But no, good to get going again. Good to be back.
Well, we had big wins, in some cases very big wins, for the favourites. Great to have one of our favourites back. We're going to be getting stuck into that England performance against the Wallabies. We're also going to be touching a bit on Ireland. Gavin, looking to you here to talk about the All Blacks a little bit. They're facing my lads this weekend. New Zealand are facing Scotland. Plenty to get stuck into. Let's get going. Promising first run out for England. A result that I think firstly, actually, sorry to start on a negative tone. Did we expect a bit more from Australia from that game? I mean, having watched them rise through the Lions, and in fact, I'll talk to you about this, Gav, because you were out there for the Lions series. Did you expect a bit more from the Wallabies?
I guess there's two things. I did. However, when you look at the fact that they were missing some key men, we talked about last week, who weren't available, it in a sense, I felt it was a shadow of the side that we saw in the second test in Melbourne. That was a game that will have gone down in Lions history for just how physical Australia took the game to the Lions and came very close to taking it to 1-1. They were workmanlike, and I think they started well.
Such a backhanded compliment.
And but ultimately, I felt overall they were strangely subdued. Quite passive, and I think they looked like a team that's played too much Test rugby.
Okay,
England were, hadn't played enough, but it was.
So with that, do you think that there's a perfect first run out for this version of the England team that Steve Borthwick's running with at the moment?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because there was, see what the other boys think, but I thought physically Australia started well. They do have big athletes, but also for England, without that much time together, it was always going to be quite a simple game plan, and I thought they executed it really impressively, and we saw a sense of their strike play, their ability to convert points from very simple box kicking, well executed aerial contests, and I have to admit, seeing a maul rolled over from outside the 22 is something that warms my heart as well. So there was a little bit.
I certainly shivered down my spine, but I'm glad to.
So Marin said afterwards, didn't he, that would have been Steve's favourite try.
Oh, massively. Yeah, massively. You think, and the one guy will have had put so much attention into detail. The casual eye will have just seen, big heavy men rolling towards the line, but the way that maul would have been constructed, and actually it's very rare, I think, in Test rugby now to see a maul go all the way. Like, you will have had the scrum half barking at the back, ready to launch a strike play off that maul, and in fact the forwards, and given it was 70 odd minute that for to have that kind of endurance and commitment, and there'd be a lot of tired bodies in that maul to keep that the form as perfectly executed as it was really impressive, and it shows a mindset, a working mindset, which I think Borthwick wants players to be working hard through the 80 minutes, and that demonstrated that perfectly.
It's great to get a shout out for the heavy lads. There was a moment a couple of weeks ago, I think it was in a Prem game, where there was a scrum and it was sort of moving forward, and the scrum half of the opposition was calling for something, and the ref was like, there's nothing illegal here, like they're just marching you backwards, and it was just a little fist bump there for the big lads.
Yeah, that one of my pet peeves is where they get told to play it.
Yes, we're on the same page on this one.
That's not in the laws.
Charlie, there was a phrase that was used with one of your pieces off the back of the England game, which was Borthball.
Yeah,
so what did you make of the way that the tactics were deployed against Australia? Because there's a sense that on one hand it's very, very pragmatic. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the Twickenham faithful would have liked Faye Woboso to get his hands on the ball a bit more, for example, but when Roebuck, for example, is playing like that with that game plan, you can see where the success lies for that team.
Yeah, so that phrase, I guess, which is in the headline, not necessarily in the body of the article, because we're just going back. The article is just looking at how closely, I guess, those tries reflect the identity of Borthwick teams down the ages, which is contestable kicking, sort of tough but agile forward play, and how a selection is tailored to an opponent. So I think the use of first of all, the selection of Borthwick's 6-2 bench, and then the timing with which it was deployed, with half an hour left. First defensive sequence, they win a jackal turnover through Luke Cowan-Dickey after Henry Pollock's had a dab at the ball. I think that was just vindication, and the maul was a really big part of how this 6-2 bench, this energised England, and played on what potentially could have been a little bit of fatigue with Australia. I think we've also written today about the defensive performance, and I think that really hammered home just how well prepared England were for this particular Australia team and the particular tactics Australia were going to use. So materially, what Australia didn't have, I think their absentees. So James O'Connor, Ikitau in the back line. Can't really mention Tom Wright because he's suffered a long term injury, but Skelton in the pack as well. I think those absentees probably more materially affected Australia's phase attack, and that was going to be the battle, which was sort of foreshadowed by Charles's piece in the week of it's that punchy phase play close to the ruck. That's what England went all in on, and they nullified Australia there. They also identified and nullified a few strike moves that Australia had. And I think that all that showed was, as Gav's, just to Gav's point, it was a game where England tactically honed in on what Australia were going to offer, probably how limited they were going to be with their absentees, and just got over the line in a pretty convincing way, ultimately, to start an autumn well.
It could have been loads more.
It could have been loads more.
I think third test of the autumn, England could win that by 40. If that's the third test of the autumn, England could win that by 40. With a bit more cohesion, a little bit less rustiness, a bit more confidence in what they're doing. Certainly with Freeman a bit more time at 13.
Yeah. So I want to stick with that, actually, because Freeman was one of the names that I wanted to talk about, because there's interestingly, there's a sort of divergence of opinion on him. Will Greenwood, for example, wrote for us about sticking with him and what he offers in that position. There are some fans out there saying, like, well, it didn't seem like he should have distributed better. He could have used others outside him. What did you make of his performance and actually some of these new partnerships that we saw?
I think he looks like a wing playing centre at the minute. Right. I know what Will's saying. I agree with Will Greenwood in that Will Greenwood was saying that it's a 2-year project ahead of the World Cup, and he's playing Freeman there now to get minutes at 13 under his belt and become a 13, basically. And the only way that you become a 13 is by playing it. But on Saturday, and it was a first hit out, first run out, he looked like a wing playing at centre. All of the bits that Will touched on in his column for us that were sort of work-ons, bits he needed to improve, were mainly all bits that outside centre does instinctively. Sort of giving the there were 2 occasions where he could have passed to Faye Woboso where. Was it the wrong call not to? Probably not. Not definitely. It was a 50-50, but it's one of them where it's just sort of like, give your wing is in space, give him a go. And then you're there in support. You don't need to. He tried to dummy and go on his first occasion, and Soali'i came across and just cut him in half. because Will Greenwood also mentioned that you just need to have that extra little burst of pace that maybe you don't need to as a winger to go through a hole because you've got a little bit more space, whereas as a 13 you need to have the change of pace, you need to have that acceleration. Even if you're not the quickest, you just need to be able to have the sort of
something different,
the go. And he didn't, when he dummied and went, he just stayed at the pace that he was running at, and Suoli came across and got him easily. So at that occasion, passing to Feo Boso, I think Austin Healey touched on it on commentary as well for TNT, that Freeman should have passed, and I agree. I don't think it was necessarily the wrong call, because if he dummies and he goes himself and scores, then everyone's saying, oh, great call not to pass. But on those occasions, 9 times out of 10, it is better just to give your winger one. He had a one-on-one with a bit of space on the outside against, I can't remember who was against him, but it was probably Jorgensen, wasn't it? But you just give, with how dangerous Feo Boso looked and how little he touched the ball, give him the ball.
That point was highlighted when Feo Boso got the ball from sort of an overcooked kick, and he just stormed it, and that lifted the whole of Twickenham. Just, if I can make one point really quickly on Freeman, I thought he was excellent in defence, and he used that. We always hear about his ability to repeat sprints, and I've highlighted a couple of instances in this article. It's online now, but there's one instance just before half-time. He makes he's in Underhill smashes Edmed in 113 channel, and Freeman goes to look over the ball. He looks up. He's then called across by George Ford to the other 13 channel, and he gets around onto the other wing effectively to make a tackle on Harry Potter that leads to a turnover. He makes a really good read. Sorry, it's an adjustment more than a read in that crucial defensive set that I was talking about in the second half, when Valentini goes to the line and passes to Wilson. That's just classic Joe Schmidt attack, those punchy, those little tip-ons, and Freeman has to readjust back onto his left shoulder to make a really good, robust tackle. His heft and his agility can be a really big asset to England defensively, and I honestly think going forward, I think we'd be, if he'd just given those 2 passes, I think we'd be raving about it as a rounded performance from a 13.
I completely agree, Charlie, and I think, you know, the concept of a 2-year project, I don't even think it's as long as that. You know, the guys finished the Six Nations at 13, and if we look at his, as you say, just his athletic prowess, to have that at 13, he's a big man. He's got the speed. He's got a kind of, you know, he's got an instinct. And I think the other key point to this, Al, is if you look at the options England now have on the wing, and it's fitting everyone in. And Feo Boso, to me, he just looked like this wonderful luxury on Saturday, that he got one ball. He looked like the most explosive, dangerous attacking player on the pitch. And that's saying something, given the athletic profile of the Australians.
Yeah. The thing is, you've got to say, like, if you're an England fan, obviously, if England are winning test matches, then the atmosphere, you'll grow. The atmosphere against New Zealand, for example, is going to be electric anyway, because it's the All Blacks playing at Twickenham. There's just so many great matches to remember from that matchup. If you're an England fan and you're looking at Feo Boso and going, why don't you give him the ball more? Like, effectively, Gavin and I were chatting before we came up here, and I was saying that the way that this Steve Borthwick team plays is that often you're going to have, it's nice to have an X-Factor player, but it's an X-Factor player that you want most to be there when there's a turnover and quick ball from it. So if a Roebuck goes up and nicks a ball in the air, or it bounces, and it's two passes to Feo Boso against a disorganised defence, gold dust. That's why you have players like that. At the moment, England fans, as you said earlier, Charles, one test into autumn, you're probably not going to see that straight away. You hope that pays dividends 3 games into the autumn. With that, there's another narrative that's growing out there. Whether it is actually strictly a bomb squad or not, people are using that phrase an awful lot to talk about the England bench. I would argue that it is not.
Ball squad.
Yeah, or
Pom squad.
That doesn't quite. Pom squad. That's not bad, actually, to be fair. But there's that growing. But then there's also other little things. Looking for hybrid players is something that England are doing. England, by the way, this might come out and we might know what the England team is today. There's a possibility they're naming the England team earlier and earlier. Now, this seems like a bit of a blueprint that we've seen from other coaches. This is something that South Africa have been going on. Charlie, you seem like you want to have...
I'm on my toes here, because we could be, as you say, we could be talking about this. The podcast could come out and the team's already gone out. So why not waste time with a few selection sort of theories? I think if they go 7-1, Rafi Quirk might be quite a clever guy to have in 23. That's the way.
To play Fiji.
That's the way South Africa have gone with Reinach on the bench, because he's a nuggety 9 who's very quick and can play on the wing. Rafi Quirk, it was sort of more by sort of preordained plan, but he was on the wing for England in that weird game against France, the France second string at Twickenham before they went on tour. And there's just a reason that he's been hanging around squads. I think, I don't know what it is, but it might be.
But Gav wrote about Ford, and that's a real option about 7-1 on.
Yeah, so I think that's something that's definitely been
Ford covering 9.
Ford can cover 9.
He did it really successfully for Leicester against Northampton when Richard Wigglesworth was sin-binned under Borthwick when Leicester won at Franklin's Gardens. Ford stepped in for 10 minutes and he was absolutely unbelievable. Like, he box kicked as well as any 9 in the Prem.
Yeah. No, you just know he's going to be equipped to do that, and right size for it as well. So that will be. Listen, I think we have to bear in mind Saturday was slightly unique in the sense that you're also bleeding in Lions players back who hadn't played a lot of rugby. So it also sort of made sense not to rush them back in. But I think there is a strategy as well, Al, that will be, Borthwick wouldn't have looked at the results last year when so many games got away from England in the final quarter, or even more tightly than that at the end of the matches. He wants experience to win matches when the game is on the line. And I think, the challenge is going to be convincing some senior pros who want to start matches that actually their best role for England is coming off the bench, and that's a man management issue.
I think we might get a blend for New Zealand, mightn't we? There'll be a mix. I mean, I can see him going, for instance, Genge, George or Cowan-Dickey. That's probably 50-50. I think Cowan-Dickey probably offers slightly more, but George's line-out arrows were unbelievable on Saturday, and actually at the start of the second half Australia got into them a bit, but first half the line-out was absolutely immaculate. And then I could see him maybe starting Joe Hayes at tight head, so that therefore you're not bringing on Baxter and Hayes together in the second half. You're bringing on Baxter and Will Stewart, or conversely Genge and Hayes. I can see not having 6 Lions on the bench against New Zealand, because he might see that as, it's all well and good being good at the end, but if the game's gone by the end, then, what's the point? But I can see him mixing it up. I really can. I don't think the starting team for New Zealand necessarily will be the best 15 players
guys
that England have available.
You've rolled into what I was saying there with fantastic, erudite, well thought out points. All I was really doing was trying to edge closer towards. And another thing, talking about referees' performance, because tip of the cap to Charles Richardson for his piece earlier in the week about the tactics that had been highlighted by those in England camp to look out for, things that had been raised to the match officials before the match. Charles, I was just wondering if you could give us a bit of a flavour about how that comes about. And do you think it was successful in any way?
Well, they won.
Yeah.
They won, and I think Australia were squeaky clean at the breakdown. When they weren't penalised that often for side entry, and there weren't that many that I saw that had sort of gone without sanction from Nika. I can't remember them getting away with. It wasn't a game where I thought they got away with murder. Both coaches afterwards said that Nika refereed very well. I'd agree with that. And yeah, well, I suppose it did work, because they won, so they highlighted it. They had Australia on high alert. They had the referee on high alert. But then, ironically, it was England who were penalised first for an attacking side entry in the match.
It was really interesting, wasn't it?
It was Benno from a Tommy Freeman carry. The one thing worth highlighting maybe is one thing that a lot of people that had the ref mic on for the game came away with. The communication between all 4 officials was so chaotic.
Yeah, it was.
That cannot have been easy for Amish Kelly to deal with. And at one point, it turned out that he actually wasn't hearing the TMO, so maybe that was a reason for it. But it did feel, it felt like a distraction to him, and I wonder whether those officials have been so on edge about this issue that...
Yeah, it almost became a little bit boy who cried wolf, because they were barking so much at him, the assistant referees on the sideline, for stuff when they didn't need to be saying anything. And then at one point, one of the ARs came in and said, there's been obstruction, penalty England, and Nika just completely ignored it or missed it, and then Australia played on and nearly scored, and it would have been a real controversial thing had Australia then gone and scored when the referees tried to penalise them for I think an escort run for a high ball.
It's always one of those challenges of the more we bring voices in that aren't the referee, that how he manages that. I think we've also seen very frustratingly recently, for some reason, technology letting down the ref. And, we'll come on to talk about Ireland All Blacks, but, one stage I read a delightful TV review of that match where, they talked about the referee trying to find a telly that worked. We just shouldn't be dealing with this. We had
not 2025
communication breakdowns as well. But and again, the point of I just remember back in the Lions here in 21, that awful game post Razzie's thing where the game went on and on and on, and no one seemed to be able to have the people were scared to make decisions, and it just ground on and on and on. I think we have to get the balance back a little bit more in the favour of the referee's call. And I thought on Saturday, despite what was going on in his ear, he actually managed it well. And I like the fact Ben Earl done, there was no sense of, he was just quite quickly dealt with the situation. He penalised both sides quite quickly. What's acceptable, what isn't, and let's get on with it.
I think on the screens point, just very quickly, that touches on a sort of wider note. They should do that anyway. What we saw in Ireland, New Zealand, with the referees huddling, with the officials huddling around a screen on the side of the pitch like VAR, they should do that anyway. Too many times we see the referees looking at a massive pixelated screen trying to figure out, squinting if there's been head contact, and the TMO might not be that certain either. That should just be standard, really, and they should go to a screen at the side because they'll get a much better view, a much clearer picture.
Okay, well, that was England 25, Australia 7. We will touch on Fiji afterwards. Just another little note as well to say how fantastic it was to see Lewis Moody going out and getting his moment for the fans at Twickenham to sort of celebrate him and his career and wish him and his family all the best. Right, after this, I suppose we should probably talk about New Zealand.
We can't move on yet. We can't move on yet because
Go on.
You have to give your interception story.
So really, really quickly, and it works because of the way we're sitting here, because this is how we were sitting.
I don't know what this is
in the press box.
Let's go.
So obviously England has just had this decent period of attack, and I can't remember what time it was that Australia's time came, but England had built into the game and were going quite well. And I thought, do you know what? Fraser Dingwall was going quite well, understatedly, and gave a big swing around to Charles, and because it had been quite quiet, just said, who's going well? Fraser Dingwall.
As he passes,
as the ball had gone.
It couldn't have been better time.
And it was the Thierry Henry, Jamie Carragher.
Yeah, it was literally that. As Harry Potter went for the interception, the ball's leaving Dingwall's hands. Charles, Dingwall's having a great game.
Believe it. I just thought that couldn't. I didn't want anybody to miss out.
That is the actual commentator's curse kiss of death, writ large at Twickenham.
Don't let anyone say we don't bring you the best stories. Right, next, New Zealand, Ireland.
Home to the world-renowned Emirates Dubai Sevens. Dubai is the ultimate destination for a sporting break. With a packed events calendar every year, including the DP World Tour Golf Championship and the Dubai Tennis Championships. There are lots of opportunities to witness world-class sport in action. Away from the stands, you'll find plenty of ways to have an active adventure holiday of your own. Try your hand at paddle, the world's fastest growing sport. Walk the breathtaking hiking trails of the Hatter Mountains. Or rent a bike and cycle alongside spectacular skylines. The only problem will be deciding which you want to do first. Swap the winter chill for sunshine and plan your sporty getaway at visitdubai.com.
Soldier Field, Chicago, New Zealand 26, Ireland 13. And you've alluded to this a little bit, Gav. Some stuff that's not quite rugby that people were talking about from that game. State of the pitch was a big talking point. Atmosphere around that game, not so much. In the end, though, it's something that's very familiar to us. Last 20 minutes of a game, and New Zealand All Blacks are accelerating through the game. What did you make of that match? And do you think that this will actually be useful for Ireland, this exercise?
Yeah, I think it will be massively useful in terms of rapidly getting them up to speed for their games in Dublin. And really, I think they will be looking at the Springboks match as really their defining moment to see where they are exactly. I think overall as an event, I think you have to feel it was a disappointment for lots of reasons. I think the there was a lot of work put in by both Ireland and New Zealand unions to try and engage with different aspects of the sports market in the US, Chicago. Some really interesting work being done, courting the host cities for the 2031 World Cup and things, to end up with a product where we had the game started with a very controversial red card decision that took several minutes for any sort of decision to be made. Clearly the pitch wasn't up to scratch. I was listening to some reports from the captains were on the Friday, and Andy Farrell was out sort of stamping the pitch down with his foot on moles of sand and things. So you've just got this sense concept. If we're going to sell a game to the US,
let's give it every opportunity.
Give it every
to thrive.
opportunity. You don't want really inexplicable delays. There was no big screen that was really keeping the crowd informed of why the Tyburn decision was being reviewed.
Penalties and stuff, I think. Clearly, trying to explain it to Newt, but I mean,
yeah,
some
it was the biggest loser last weekend was Rugby World Cup 2031, especially with what happened at Murrayfield. You know, it really was, wasn't it?
Yeah. So those two combinations of just put on a good production, and you know, the pitch wasn't up to scratch. There was TMO issues. There was kind of just production value issues that we saw. That Twickenham, to be fair, it's a really good show at Twickenham when you look at you take things for granted. I think in Australia, again, really advanced sports market there. Some of the production values they had for the Lions matches, was the best I've ever seen. To be fair, it's inexplicable, but when you see it, you know it, and it's like this is just building an atmosphere.
And France at the Stade de France as well are amazing, aren't they? They have, you remember that hacker from last year that was just.
But that is something that is it controllable? That if you put the work in, you get the right people, you can help that. So I think, and the delayed start, the fact that Ireland, you could clearly see, just in key moments, looked rusty.
Yeah.
Mentally, Farrell said about them switch. It wasn't physical fatigue. It was just making the right decisions. You saw again a bit of indecision with Jack Crowley at key moments in that final quarter. And what doesn't change is when you give New Zealand half a chance, they have the skill set, the game management to just bang, 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 take a game away from you. You cannot give them a moment, and they have had their ups and downs this year, but their rugby intelligence and their skills and their executions, it doesn't change. And that's the area when you talk about, will Ireland benefit from this? It will have exposed to them where they are short and rusty. And again, I just don't know. It's difficult with these games outside the window that we know, Twickenham, we know Australia are have just come from Japan, and they're missing some key players. England are trying to get themselves up to speed. We saw the same in Chicago. It's just a shame these games weren't week 3 or 4, and you would have really seen a proper full-on top tier encounter.
Some of the All Blacks attack, I agree, weird is probably the best way to describe that game. It felt sort of subdued, just odd, a lot of it.
Ireland were 10-0 up, weren't they?
Yeah.
13? Yeah. Did they go 13-3 or 13?
Yeah, 13 having already gone a man down.
Yeah.
But one thing is good to sort of highlight that New Zealand are in a funny place, aren't they? Definitely in transition. But some of their attack, even in the game that they got pumped by the Springboks in, is really breathtaking the way they're moving the ball. Seeing Lester Fayenganuku coming back, and just one of his first involvements was
to go around Gary Ringo.
Super, and then offload out 2 tackles. And that becomes 7 points because of how clinical they are. So they've still got that in their locker, which is, I guess, reassuring for them.
What do we think about the red?
It was good. You've just taken the question out of my mouth.
Meatloaf.
Because also Bowden Barrett said after the game, if people want me to speak up for him, I will. It's
players are never going to think that's a red. Isn't that the thing?
And I think it's the sort of tackle that you don't want to see given as a red, because it wasn't really a tackle, was it? He was sort of bracing himself, almost trying to get out the way of, because Bowden said he didn't expect the ball. And so therefore Tyburn was definitely not expecting Bowden Barrett to have the ball. but I think
Intention
letter of the
isn't
law,
in the laws.
exactly. So therefore, I think letter of the law, it is a red, but then they need to a 20-minute red. Surely reinforce and ram home to the referees that you can bring sort of common sense and contextual judgment into these decisions, and he is not that just because he's sort of shouldered arms. That's not him trying to shoulder barge Ben Barrett. He was trying to get out the way, and that's patently obvious for everyone. It was like a brace position because he's realised, oh Jesus, I was not expecting Ben Barrett to get the ball, and I'm in trouble here.
Ultimately, there might have been, to play for 14 men without for 20 minutes for 14 men, it's going to take something out of your legs. Mm-hmm. But it's not, I don't think it's why Ireland lost.
No.
And actually, they managed that period. They went 10-0 up. It was still 10-7 when Ian Henderson came on in the 23rd minute. So it made for a sort of messy, flat start to the two, and obviously missing Tadhg Beirne, world-class player. But, the game was lost in the final quarter when Ireland was still leading and had the ability to win the game, and they just switched off at key moments. And
it's just that ability to accelerate through the end of games is still something where every top coach in the world is going to want to try and replicate. I suspect it's something that, bearing in mind what we're talking about with the POM squad, is that I'm definitely running with that, is accelerating through the ends of games, and that will certainly be something that's considered. Speaking of acceleration, Gav, the one thing we can't get away from, and it's something that we've said about Ireland over and over, and we can chat a little bit about the generation that's maybe coming to the end of their time with this Ireland national team, but the one thing is that we haven't had for quite a while now is out and out gas. How much of a concern is that for Ireland?
It's a major concern. You look back, the last speech they had was Dennis Hickey, and that's
deep cut for the kids.
Dennis Hickey.
Yeah.
So, but genuinely, the athletics, genetics, the competition for athletes, Gaelic football, hurling. There's lots of reason why, in the kind of the Irish rugby talent pool, they just at the minute in the last decade haven't produced. Now Tommy O'Brien came in and is quick, but they just didn't. They didn't really. He just couldn't.
He
get
looked
in
good.
The game. Yeah,
I thought when in his limited involvement, I thought he looked good.
But you can see why, since certainly under the Andy Farrell tenure, he has gone for wingers, but also wingers who can play. So it's almost, James Lowe and Mark Hansen's point of difference isn't their speed, but it's their ability to add an extra attacking distributor, kicker.
Same as Keenan.
I think he described it as messy wingers, was it? That thing of guys who get involved, come in all the time. So that's where Ireland were able to sort of keep more players on their feet in attacking phase play. But I think we're seeing that, and we talked about this earlier, Al, but right now the transition for Ireland is when they were at their peak in 23, it was all about possession, multi-phase attack. The game's changed since then, and I think Ireland haven't really managed to adapt themselves to like the way we saw England play of just strike plays. You're not actually having the ball isn't that important. It's like how your detail around it, the kick, the pace. That's not what Ireland have at the minute, and I think a lot is made about the age profile. For me, the biggest point in all this is having a 10. They haven't replaced Johnny Sexton yet.
It's good that narrative's rumbling on.
And you've got two really young 10s who just don't have the same game management and just vision and knowing when to do the right thing instinctively and doing that for 80 minutes. And, there will be an evolution in the side. And we started to see Paddy McCarthy got his debut as 22-year-old, and he's definitely one for the future. His brother Joe, when he's fit, and if he's fit against the All Blacks, but see, they're bleeding in guys. Mm-hmm. But to me, the key thing is solving the 10 dilemma.
Okay, now this one, I'm looking to you for this one, Charlie Morgan, and I'm very much wearing my navy blue hat on this one. Is what should Scotland be looking out for from New Zealand off the back of that?
It was a power surge from South Africa that sort of took them away. Esterhuizen had his best game for the Boks. I think, I think, and I always say this because I'm always high on Scotland because I just covered so many Calcutta Cup games where Finn Russell's just looked, and it hasn't been the amazing things. I'm honestly like a broken record with this. I must have made this point a million times, but it's not the eye-catching passes that he's pushing and the 30-metre passes that he's throwing. It's how he controls a game and how much restraint he shows in a game with a kicking game and things like that, and how Scotland's fantastically balanced backline get opportunities off the back of that. They will clearly need to. I think the All Blacks will fancy their chances of going hard at Scotland at the scrum and the line out and stuff like that. And Jason Ryan, their forwards coach, is just such a big asset for them. And talking of the bomb squad, that's what helped the All Blacks. Basilio Tosi, their massive tight head, Wallace Titi, and Tokiaho came off the bench as well.
Sam Williams as well.
Yeah, those guys are really influential. So it's Scotland taking chances early and just backing their own game, which I think can be good enough. I just really think that they have enough about them, Scotland. And I know that if you asked somebody who've maybe covered more Ireland Scotland games, they would say that Scotland should be worried. But I think at home, if Scotland get their best balanced game on the pitch and their back five really stand up, I think they could take it really deep. I think they can win it. Sorry to say.
Right.
Is that you predicting a Scotland win it against New Zealand?
My goodness. I'm just going to wipe that last 2 minutes from my memory. Right, I'll tell you what, let's take a short break and then let's look ahead because we've already started looking forward to the games this weekend. Okay, other matches this weekend. Charles, I'm looking to you as our resident expert on all things France. France versus South Africa, first meeting between them since the 29-28 Classic at the 2023 World Cup. Genuinely thrilling stuff. I think we've spoken about this before. What a moment that was. What do you think? What do you think the mindset is going to be in France?
I think among the public, certainly they will want revenge and retribution. Yeah, absolutely. How much what happened in 2023 affects what goes on the field on Saturday, I'm not too sure. Two fairly different sides now. It was also 2 years ago. Obviously, there was a lot more at stake 2 years ago than there will be on Saturday. I know both teams will want to win, but it really doesn't mean very much if you win or lose, whereas obviously it meant everything in 2023. I think one person that I'm glad that I'm not on Saturday night is Angus Gardner, who is going to be the referee, and he's got a bit of a hospital pass there because obviously in 2023, certainly among the public, Ben O'Keefe was the referee, and the French public didn't rate his performance very much, and neither did any of the French players.
Dupont quite publicly.
Dupont had a bit of a go at him, and I don't think he's refereed France since.
He's not referee this week, is it?
No, he's Angus Gardner on Saturday night. And I don't think he's refereed France since. Might be wrong on that, and if I am, then I apologise, but I'm pretty sure he has not refereed France since that 2023 World Cup. I wonder when the next time will be.
Well, just staying with you on this, the transition that France are going through, if you could just explain to us a little bit about what this current France setup looks like and what's different from maybe what we saw even in the Six Nations.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the sounds of things, Gregory Aldrit is being sort of phased out from that French pack. They had Michael Guillard, who played second row during the Six Nations, they've sort of converted into a number 8. He's a big old lump, and then that means that they can play Meafu in the second row because you couldn't really have both of them in the second row together. Untamak, it looks like he's going to continue ahead of Jalibert. They really like Luku. Whether he starts at 9, whether he's fit enough, with obviously Dupont coming back from injury, we'll see. And the centres, it looks like Mofana and Fiku might both be injured. They started in the Six Nations, so it could be a completely new centre pairing. It could be Gaëtan and Deporter of Bordeaux. With the sort of standard back three, I think the back three will maintain Biel-Bire and Penaud and Ramos. I think they've had an extra training week without a game. They didn't play last weekend. They had a full league fixtures, but 23 players were allowed to not play. Gautier was allowed to stand down 23 players from French league action last weekend. I think it's going to be incredibly close. When they met just before the 2023 World Cup in the autumn of 2022, I thought France would win. This weekend, I think South Africa edge it just because consistency and cohesion, continuity, battle hardened. France coming into it a bit cold. However, I mean, it is such a cliche, but you never know with them. You never know. France could win that game by 20 points or lose by 20 points on Saturday. I think I really do think that they're Six Nations champions. They are always tough to beat. But if South Africa build up a bit of a lead with France without their talisman Antoine Dupont and maybe not quite as battle hardened as South Africa, we could see what happened against New Zealand quite easily in the Rugby Championship.
Charlie, very quickly on South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this golden period gonna end?
Going to stop? No,
Yeah.
no, they've regenerated really well. Feinberg Mngomezulu is a great poster boy for that. And he looks to be the guy that's going to take the kind of torch forward at 10. They are being a bit meddlesome with how they pick teams. I think Esterhazen was in the 20 jersey, wasn't he, for the Japan game?
Forwards.
As they blooded a guy who's just come out of the under-20s at tight head. So they're sort of looking ahead. They just work on theories and get them all sort of in a nice working spot for the time of the World Cup. They're just experts at managing the cycle, and they lean into that, I get, even more than sort of Eddie Jones did, you know. So that they're certainly on the right track, I would say.
Okay, Scotland face New Zealand this weekend. I'm not going to dwell too long on this because, frankly, Charlie scared the hell out of me.
High balls, another area that Scotland could go after. Argentina, that was a big kind of pillar of their win over the All Blacks earlier this year.
Okay, that's an interesting nugget. Also, obviously, if you didn't know, Scotland hammered the USA 85-0. It was a rampant display. There were hat-tricks all around. Charlie was particularly pleased to see Dobby getting on the
and George Horn from the bench.
And George
I think.
Horn. You love George Horn.
I love it. However, I was just checking into Ben White would probably come back into that mix.
Well, this is the other thing as well, is that the guys that played out, because it wasn't in the test window, you'll suddenly then be like, well, Finn Russell, in you come, my friend.
Jimmy Ritchie from Perpignan.
Yeah, Kinghorn, all these names suddenly come back in the mix, so it will be a very different team from the one that took on USA. Obviously, as Gav touched on, very concerning for everything looking ahead to the World Cup in the US, just where the state of American rugby is at the moment. I'm sure that's something that we'll talk about in greater depth further down the line. Wales versus Argentina, Gav. Interesting moment for Wales, this. We've had lots of upheaval off the park. There's certainly uncertainty around the club game there. You know, recommendations of axing teams, talk of the going down to 3. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be a new entity? Just a complete soap opera at all times. But in the background, Steve Tandy's come in, very well respected. Certainly those in Scotland speak very highly of him. Yeah. Those who went on the Lions tour with him speak very highly of him. He knows a lot of those players. Certainly there's a bit of revisionist history probably going on from the people upstairs in Welsh Rugby going, he was probably really harshly dealt with when he was at the Ospreys. His stock is really on the rise. We've got Rhys Zammit coming back in that sort of gives a little bit of electricity, but their form has been atrocious coming to this point. What do you expect from them against Argentina, which is, tell you what, the way Argentina played in that Rugby Championship, they're a hell of a side at the moment.
They are, although in some ways it's not the worst start, I think, for Wales, because it's a game they can win. If they're playing South Africa or something, that's just what they don't need right now. But for me, this is all going to be about managing the kind of mood of the squad, and it must be a desperately difficult time at the minute as a professional rugby player in Wales, with the uncertainty that's really been there. It's been ongoing for at least 5 years, really, that people have been thinking, are they going to cut regions, are they not? They've got to the point where they're now talking about it out loud. It's going to happen. I think it's really, really important that Tandy comes in and sort of brings the group together, and they have a bit of a moment together. So it's like, guys, this is how we're going to go forward. The fresh start with I think this is probably the third reset since Gatling came back. But this feels more that it's new, but it's also permanent, and it's got his authority coming in. Very, very highly respected coach, both for Scotland and the Lions. And he's got his own coaching team now, and I think they just have to unite around, give them something to play for. And I think encouragingly with, I don't know, I just seeing how Jack Morgan did for the Lions, and it was just almost like sort of one man representing the whole of Wales, and he did it so well with such aplomb and such commitment. And that's the kind of guy you want as a figurehead for, Welsh rugby. What, generations of talent, again, like the All Blacks, naturally gifted players who also have rugby intelligence. And this transition period is going to be difficult, and it could take several years. But I think you have to hope that Wales have the tradition and a little bit more focus. And if it goes down to 3 regions and they are better financed and there's more focus and there's a bit more of a sort of centrally contract aspect to how Wales build their squad, then I think you've got to hope that in the medium to long term, Wales can get back to where they should be.
Do you think they've got a tough autumn? To be fair, I know they start off against Argentina, which it could be a lot worse, as you say. So one win maybe against Japan, bare minimum, and then 2 bonus, 2 above par, would you say? And then 3 is absolute dreamland.
2 would be fantastic, and then the other 2 games they are on the ropes, tucking up, to be honest. I think they want to throw a few punches at themselves against New Zealand, but the South Africa game out of the window, to return to the theme we started at, looks just horrible already. I'm there on Sunday. I'm looking forward to it. Rerun of one of the quarterfinals at the last World Cup, if that's just struck me now. Yeah, as we were talking about
England Fiji as well. It's a complete rerun.
Yeah. And on that point, you sort of forget that's only 2 years ago. Wales were quite close to getting their World Cup semi-final.
Yeah,
they should have won that game a little bit more. They just again, but like Ireland on Saturday, they lost their way at 10. They've got the potential there. They just need to drag themselves up.
Just very, 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 very quickly, Charlie, in 10 words or 12, just to bring it full circle, Fiji this weekend, England are playing Fiji. What are you most excited about seeing from the Fijians?
How they trouble England beyond 13, I think.
Okay.
Or even at 12 with Tuisova.
Okay. As ever, we will bring you everything from that match. Right, let's end this the way that we always do, with your questions. And this one comes from Andrew. All change for Fiji, pretty much, or same again to build cohesion for the ABs. You expecting them to just chuck in a few combinations that we haven't seen?
I think this week might be the week to go 7-1. He's mentioned that he's been looking at it. If you're not going to do it this week...
This is the split on the bench.
Yeah, 7-1 bench split. If you're not going to do it this week, then there aren't going to be many other occasions to try, unless you think that it is absolutely necessary against a specific opposition. So I think we could see 7-1. Otherwise, I would go full strength against Fiji. I would go whatever the team you think it is against New Zealand. You go with that this week. A few changes, perhaps. You pick your first choice starting 15, whatever you think that is, ready for New Zealand, and use this as a bit of a tune-up, a bit of a warm-up ahead of the All Blacks. I think he will be wary that the last time Fiji came to Twickenham, England lost.
Well, I was going to bring this up, Gav, because knowing Borthwick as you do, I mean, there must be a little bit in the back of his mind that's like, both Fiji were very, 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 very handy against England ahead of the World Cup. Obviously, he'd been sort of thrown in at the deep end at that point. Does revenge play on his mind at all, or does he just go, you know what's best for this full autumn programme is what I should do?
Definitely the latter. Interestingly, when I mentioned that memory of the Twickenham defeat, he, quick as a flash, came back saying the last time we played Fiji, we beat them in the World Cup quarterfinal. So he had already moved on from that. I think that was a very different time for England, and also in the middle of World Cup conditioning camps. Everyone was on different trajectories about where they were getting ready for the World Cup. This is definitely about the evolution of this side this autumn, and I'm quite torn. I think I largely agree with Charles that England want to be building in those partnerships. We've talked about Freeman. He needs more time. You really want to be getting that right for New Zealand without disrespecting Fiji. But at the same time, you're managing quite a lot of players now who will expect to, like Ollie Lawrence will be expecting to play and start for England. You've got
really quickly jump on that. Like, he's a guy that I was just going to bring that up, and I think there's two ways you can go. And I think in both ways, you're maintaining the Freeman experiment. They've looked at Freeman and Lawrence together off the bench. When everything's moved around off the bench, they've finished games with Freeman and Lawrence. And so you could either do that from the start, or you could maintain Dingwall there. And we know Dingwall just being this understated.
I think that might happen. And then it's just then you probably need a Marcus Smith at 15. Yeah. You need another distributor playmaker if you're going to go for those two. Mm-hmm. But that could be a really interesting combination.
I just wonder whether he might think that it's too lightweight. As in, I think he might look at Lawrence. I agree, because Tuisova's at 12, and I know you don't pick a team around one bloke, but he's an absolute animal, and he's a monster. He's one of the strongest backs in world rugby, and I think there is a risk of with Freeman. I know Freeman is a lump, but Tuisova is bigger. With Freeman having only his third test at 13, and Dingwall inside him, who is not the biggest bloke, there's a risk that Fiji could get sort of a lot of purchase through that midfield.
Actually, we've got a question in from Stephen, and this sort of jumps off the back of that, which says, are England going the same route with wingers that they have with flankers due to depth and quality, sacrificing specialists in centre or at number 8 to get more of a certain type on the field? Charlie, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I do. I think that even when you're looking at England 23 now, you are pitting who is more valuable to a side, and therefore who is more likely to get in the side. Is it an extra flanker, in which case they go 6-2, even 7-1 in this brand new world, or is it that centre, and therefore do they go 5-3? And then the other thing, as Stephen's mentioned there, Stephen Borthball is is a wing like Tommy Freeman, because someone we haven't hardly mentioned on this podcast, Tom Roebuck, he was fantastic, and part of the reason
should have been man of the match, really.
Part of the reason that the Freeman move to 13 was so attractive, pragmatic, was because Tom Roebuck has been so assured with every chance he's been given in Test rugby. I remember even when he was brought off the bench, I think it was like as a blood replacement against South Africa, they immediately went, right, we've got this asset in the air, let's launch a high ball. And
that guy can levitate. I'm not convinced that he's tethered to the ground.
And like somebody wrote out all of the sort of, Freeman's 6'4", isn't he? Stewart's 6'5". Roebuck is only 6'2". That's plenty. I'm still looking up at him like that. But his bound, his athleticism is really, really impressive, and his poise with it. How he moves his body, how he turns. Caught the first ball above Suoliti with the sort of old school basket techniques. Turned to sort of bat the second one in to Pollock using a totally different technique. Very, very, very good player. Very suited to how Steve Borthwick sets up his team for Test matches.
And I've got another last question for the table, whoever wants to take this up. Really interesting thought from Scrumming Fly Half. One of our listeners from South Africa has asked, should out of window games count in terms of ranking points? Now, obviously, this is a big thing because at the end of this window, we'll be looking at the World Cup draw in December.
Like it.
Interesting point. Do you agree with that?
No.
No,
no, I don't. It's still a test match. Both teams were all the teams were almost at full strength. There's nothing to say that a game in the window, would have fewer. You might get an injury crisis, and then does that mean that it doesn't count for rankings points? Australia were missing 4 of their best players. England were missing Furbank, George Martin, Jack Van Portfleet probably on the bench at 9. So there's 3 from the 23 where Australia are missing 4. Well, with Tom Wright, I suppose, as well, with an injury. But, it swings and roundabouts. It was still a full test match. England could have won by more. Australia had the resources to win that game. They weren't good enough on the day.
I think a broader point is the value of test rugby. So
absolutely.
Yes, whether we talk about ranking
I agree with that
or not, it's like there is a risk that we're playing too much test rugby. It's going to devalue the product, and that's not good long term for just the business of rugby.
No, I agree with that.
I was only going to jump in to say I think Scrumming Fly Half was behind Pom Squad. So credit where it's due.
Right, okay.
I think that's where I
double
saw
win
it.
for him on
yeah.
this podcast.
Oh, we thought that was a Charlie Morgan original.
No. I was always going to come. You cut me off just as I was about to credit, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today. England are off with a win. We've got some huge matches to come this weekend. As I can imagine, everyone's got their eyes on Murrayfield this weekend. We'll be picking through all of it. I suspect that we'll be having something on one Roebuck coming from the Telegraph Sport this weekend. Please keep an eye out for all of our fantastic coverage from all of these guys. They are going to be beavering away all through the autumn and beyond. Thank you very much to Charlie, Charles and Gav for joining us and giving us their expertise. 4 of us will be back next week to unpick all the action from those matches. In the meantime, keep your eye on Telegraph and please keep sending your questions in because we love hearing your thoughts as well. Cheers.
Home to the world-renowned Emirates Dubai Sevens, Dubai is the ultimate destination for a sporting break. With a packed events calendar every year, including the DP World Tour Golf Championship and the Dubai Tennis Championships. There are lots of opportunities to witness world-class sport in action. Away from the stands, you'll find plenty of ways to have an active adventure holiday of your own. Try your hand at paddle, the world's fastest growing sport. Walk the breathtaking hiking trails of the Hatter Mountains. Or rent a bike and cycle alongside spectacular skylines. The only problem will be deciding which you want to do first. Swap the winter chill for sunshine and plan your sporty getaway at visitdubai.com.